Okay, Shalom Ubracha, Shavua Tov, welcome back. This is an exciting week because we have, by the end of the week on Friday, the 10th of Tevet, Reb Noson's yard site. And we are investing a lot in Reb Noson and how he viewed the Rebbe, because he was the closest person to Rabbi Nachman. And Rabbi Nachman obviously is from a different world, is out of this world. He worked on reaching a level which is beyond capacity, but the closest to us of a human comprehension and human connection to Rabbi Nachman is Rav Noson. And like Rabbi Nachman himself said, no one understands me except for Rav Noson a little. Rav Noson a little. And then the rest of the people much less than that. So if that's the case, I should work at viewing and learning and perceiving Rabbi Nachman the way Rabbi Nachman himself, Rav Noson perceived him, more than my own perception. With that said, it's a reminder, a recap of why we are doing Rav Noson's letters, paralleling the lesson that he was learning at the time, Likutey Moharan lesson 24, because in Rav Noson's letters, we see how he was subconsciously and by hint living the teachings of Rabbi Nachman. And that's our goal, is to pinpoint, to sift out the messages, the hints to how much Rav Noson is living in Rabbi Nachman's teachings. We are now skipping after, we left off last time Rav Noson wrote letters and a period that he was learning lesson, Likutey Moharan lesson 24, was the year 1830. And now we're jumping to 1843. The year 1843, 1844. Taf Resh Dalit. Okay, so this is a 13-year gap. And Rav Noson, his grasp of Rabbi Nachman's teachings has just advanced. And the depth and the quality and the quantity of his writings just expands more. Even in his letters, he's much more writing to people in depth. And in his discourses, he's also going much deeper. In this period, in 1843, 1844, Reb Noson wrote one of his longest discourses on Likutey Halakhot, one of them. It's Likutey Halakhot, section Orach Chaim, Birkat Hoda'ah, the laws of the blessings of giving thanks, which on another terminology is called the Birkat HaGomel, the blessing of when a person passes out of a danger, survives the danger, he gives a certain specific blessing to Hashem, Bezrat Hashem. 1 second here. So, Bezrat Hashem, just 1 second, someone's at the door. Sorry about that. So we now are 1843, 1844. 13 years after Rav Noson, we last saw him in how he wrote his letters. And he's now writing a discourse which is very lengthy. It's over 70 paragraphs. Birkat Hoda'ah, the laws of giving thanks, which is Birkat HaGomel, discourse number 6. And in it, Rav Noson is now writing on a much deeper level. The way he's writing now, he's going a lot into Kabbalah and expounding on the Kabbalistic depth hidden in Rabbi Nachman's teachings. And he connects them, in our case, in this lesson, he goes through from Parshat Lech Lecha all the way up to almost Purim and Pesach. So it's a longer length. And he shows Rav Noson his personal expression of joy and this amazing concept that Reb Noson really develops here, how if a person works on being besimcha, that is the key for everything else in life, especially the challenges and traumas and pains and difficulties that people go through in their life, inevitably. Everybody, unfortunately, has to go through something in life. It's hard to say that, and it's sad to say that, but it's part of reality, because this is what builds a person more than anything else, is the challenges they face in life. So Reb Noson's advice for all of that is work on simcha. If you worry and you get sucked into the fear of what you're going through, and the panic and the stress, so it will eat away at your health, eat away at your emotions, eat away at your emunah, your yirat shamayim, your davening quality, your Torah study, your quality of living. Everything, chas v'shalom, will go down when a person just gets sucked into what he's facing in life. Whereas, if instead a person knows it's a test and realizes the only way out is I have to be positive, I have to work on being b'simcha, this is the key. On a personal level, this is this key which comes out in this lesson, Birkat Hoda'ah Lachavav, was the reason I got sucked into lesson 24, because I saw that this is the key. Reb Noson is saying basically, Ki b'simcha tetzeu. With joy, you will leave. You will leave out of everything in life. Work on the joy. But this is hurting me, and the thoughts keep on attacking me. So like a horse, when the horse steers off, the person pulls the reins to put the horse back on the right track. So too, as many times as it takes, as much as the negativity and the fear and the trauma and the worry and the despair are attacking a person, every time he attacks, I just push it back to simcha. I'm here. I get attacked again and again and again. No problem. More simcha, more simcha, more simcha. Until they realize they can't bring you down anymore. The Yetzirah can't use these tests to make you low and miserable and negative, because you're always turning to simcha, so then they back down to a certain degree. Okay? So Reb Noson realized this, and already we're talking about a year before he passes away. Reb Noson is already 64 years old. He's now 64 years old in the year 1844. He passes away the next year at age 65, on the 10th of Tevet. Okay? Reb Noson is not young, 63, 64. He's gone through a big chunk of life. Okay? That's more than half of life, technically. If life is 120 years, he's already after midway. And Reb Noson went through a lot of challenges. This specific year, 1843, 1844, Reb Noson saw in his life both amazing breakthroughs and openings and happy events, and also very difficult, painful events at the same time. And Reb Noson wasn't weighed down by anything. He shows in this discourse how he's able to find Torah in everything. In this year, 1843, on the positive side, we're talking about the end of 1843, 1844, the year Tafresh Dalid. It's funny because it's Tered. Tafresh Dalid is to go down. Laredet. Red. Tered. The year 1843, 1844 in Hebrew, Tered, go down. Reb Noson was going down to go up. On the positive side, Reb Noson finally printed his own book called Likutey Halakhot. The first volume 1 of his eventual 8-volume set called the Likutey Halakhot. And for Reb Noson, this was a major breakthrough, because until that point, he was busy writing books, about Rabbi Nachman, from Rabbi Nachman, explaining Rabbi Nachman's teachings directly. And for the first time, he's printed his book of discourses, which, by the way, are also through Rabbi Nachman. What happened is that Rabbi Nachman instructed Reb Noson to have a special study session where he should learn together the Code of Jewish Law, the Shulchan Aruch, with Rabbi Nachman's Likutey Moharan, and develop insights in halacha, but not necessarily halachic insights, on the hashkafa, the perspective, the why behind the halacha, using Rabbi Nachman's Likutey Moharan. Reb Noson didn't follow the Likutey Moharan in order. He would follow the Shulchan Aruch from cover to cover, all 4 sections, and he did it. The tradition is he did it 8 times. This study session, in his 40 years, he was able to do it in a 8-cycle cycle, 8 times the cycle. And in Likutey Moharan, he would jump around using whatever inspiration was inspiring him at the time from a specific lesson. He would then put it in the halacha, and examine the deeper meaning behind the tefillin, kashrut, the laws of lending money, the laws of Shabbat, everything that's in the code of Jewish law, even things which are so far-fetched. What is the law of leaving a will for yetomim, for orphans? What does it have to do to me on a practical level? Like it's a halacha which is very rare. It's not shaykh to me, and yet Reb Noson was able to bring out a practical dimension, and in the most amazing way, absolutely amazing. Rabbi Nachman told Reb Noson, "I'm going to open your mind to my book, and you'll be able to travel each lesson like a visitor, though, going from palace to palace, from room to room, the beautiful palace of each lesson, and seeing the most wondrous things, not because you deserve it, but because I want it to be so." And that's what actually happened. Reb Noson's mind was open to the depth behind the Likutey Moharan, and anybody who sees his book, Likutey Halakhot, can attest that this cannot be written by a human being. It's impossible that a normal person could come up with these ideas. It's absolutely out of this world and phenomenal, okay? Even Rav Aryeh Kaplan, who translated many books in English, especially for NCSY, beginner's books on the secret of the mikveh, tefillin, tzitzit, Shabbat, almost every book that Rav Aryeh Kaplan wrote, and he's considered one of the best people in the English-speaking world of bringing a clear presentation to anyone, to beginners, on Torah ideology. Most of the quotes he's taking is from Rav Noson's Likutey Halakhot. Phenomenal. People don't even realize that. And Rav Noson, in his book Likutey Halakhot, is able to bring down on a practical dimension the whole Torah, to show how it applies to you on a personal level and how you can connect to it, how you can connect to the Simcha of Purim, how you can connect to Shabbos davening, Shacharit, Mincha, Arvit, Tefillin, Tzitzit, Brachot, Kashrut, Torah study, Emunah, talking to Hashem, everything that's happening on a daily basis, raising children, a family, going out to work, Parnasa, going to the mikveh, everything. Rav Noson is phenomenal. He goes to every area of life. It's unbelievable. And he gets your imagination activated, that you can even develop more ideas based on what he says. So Rabbi Nachman himself told him to start this study session about the year 1805, 1806. So Rav Noson was writing for a period of 40 years. 1805, 15, 25, 35, 45. Amazing. And as Rav Noson kept on writing, his grasp on the depth of Rabbi Nachman's teaching was getting just deeper and deeper and deeper. He himself told his son, Rav Yitzchak, please spend more time learning the later discourses that I wrote, because there he invested much more in depth. And you can feel more the amazing connection to the world of spirituality in the later discourses. This one that we're working on now, Birkat Hoda'ah Vav, was written about a year before he passed away. Unbelievable. So you can imagine Reb Noson, 64 years old, is already accomplished in Kabbalah, in Halacha, in every area of the Torah. Plus Rabbi Nachman's blessing to open his mind to his Likutey Moharan shows us an amazing, amazing book. About the greatness of this Likutey Halakhot, we can go on and on and on. Just a few points that I can't skip is Rav Noson had a dream in the time that he was being persecuted. You see, between 1830 and 1843-44, there were 3 years called the years of oppression, which was a very, very difficult time for the Breslov Hasidim and especially Rav Noson. We're talking about from 1835, 36, 36, 37, 37, 38. And it was scary. They don't like talking about it because it doesn't do good to Am Yisrael, but terrible inner conflict against the Breslov movement. If there's any conflict that's existing today still, it's rooted in that conflict that took place from the years 1835 to 1838. Literally, people tried to kill Rav Noson. You can't imagine the Jews would do this to other Jews. Religious Jews with beard and payas and from and everything would hunt down another Jew to kill them. But then again, it's nothing new. In the past parshas, we just saw how the brothers of Yosef wanted to kill Yosef. We see how King Shaul wanted to kill King David. We see how certain rabbis were against other rabbanim. The Ramah wanted to put the Arizal in Cherem. The Baal Shem Tov, what he suffered from the Misnagdim and the Magen Mizrach with the Vilna Gaon. Okay, it's something that appears in history again and again of internal conflict. It's called in Hebrew kategoria bein talmidei chachamim, strife and conflict between the Torah scholars. He writes in many places that if anything in the world is keeping Mashiach from coming, it's this more than anything else. People can say, okay, the lack of tzniut, people are speaking Lashon Hara, people have to do more Shabbat observance, okay? There's many things we give to attribute why Mashiach's not here yet. But Reb Noson in his writings, he boils it down to this one point of inner feud amongst tzaddikim. Why amongst tzaddikim? Because they know better than anybody else. You know more than other people, and then chas v'shalom, you take upon strife. So then the ripple effect, the repercussion is on the laymen, the regular Jews, and then it goes on for a few generations, and that's more damaging than anything else, is the inner conflict amongst Am Yisrael. Rabbi Nachman had a son, Rav Shlomo Ephraim. He called him Shlomo Ephraim, to indicate he was the combination of Mashiach ben David, which is Shlomo, the son of David is Shlomo, and Mashiach ben Yosef, the son of Yosef being Ephraim. He called this unique boy Shlomo Ephraim, and he once told his after this son died. So before he died at the bris, he was so happy, and one of his disciples, Rav Yudel, had a new coat, and he told him, Rav Yudel, with this coat you're going to greet Mashiach. Okay, so then afterwards, this son died after a year and a half from tuberculosis. Rabbi Nachman, he pushed his chassidim, daven for this child, Yetzer Hara has his eyes on this child, daven, and it didn't work, he died. And Rabbi Nachman then said that Mashiach arrival has been pushed off for at least 100 years. So he was expected to come in 1806. So pushed off 100 years is, let's say, 1906. Okay? So Rav Yudel said, but you told me I'm going to greet Mashiach with this jacket. He said, that's what I said then when he was alive. Now I say differently. Okay? The strife then against Rabbi Nachman was just accumulating. And he attested the death of this child due to the machloket. And then Rav Noson faced even more strife from a specific Rebbe. He was called then the Savrana Rebbe, who initiated a lot of heat against Rav Noson. And Rabbi Nachman's time, the main Rebbe who initiated strife against him, his name was the Shpola Zayda. He was one of the oldest surviving students of the Baal Shem Tov. That's why he's called Zayda. He was a Zaydi. The Shpola is the Zaydi, the grandfather from Shpola, because he was old still, and he was still around by Rabbi Nachman's time. Rabbi Nachman is 3 generations after the Baal Shem Tov. It's his great-grandfather. 4 generations after the Baal Shem Tov. So there was machloket, and then Rabbi Nachman's time pushed off 100 years. And then Rav Noson, after what happened with the Savraner, which you can read in English in the book, To Fire and Water, you have the whole... they can't put the whole story because it's too hard to read. It's too crazy, it's too unbearable. But they put what they felt people can read at least and still be shocked but not go crazy. So you have it translated the book To Fire and Water. And Rav Noson said himself that this strife due to the Savraner, that they would burn and destroy Breslov books, and the Breslovers were beaten up, and people were persecuted, and people's livelihoods were intervened and ruined, and there was a lot of suffering, and people, because that, decided to run away from Breslov because it was considered taboo and forbidden, and it brushed off for many generations later. So Noson said the damage that caused pushed off Mashiach for another 100 years. So that brings us from 1906 to 2006. So now we're in a time where things, Baruch Hashem, there's a big arousal of Rabbi Nachman's teachings all over the world. More and more people are open. More rabbis are now open to learning Rabbi Nachman's teachings. We're in a different era now, an era where there's much more Baruch Hashem acceptance. But still, we need to see Mashiach. We have to see what's happening here. So Rav Noson went in this period. He went through a lot of strife. In that time, between 1835 to 1838, he had a dream of Rabbi Nachman with someone else standing next to him. And in the dream, Rav Noson began to cry in front of Rabbi Nachman, I'm suffering terribly from this persecution. We're suffering terribly. So then Rabbi Nachman tried to console Rav Noson, and he said in Yiddish, but you did very good with what you're writing, your chidushim on the Likutey Halakhot. And the man next to Rabbi Nachman says, in Yiddish, yo, sehr gut, you did very well. And Rav Noson asked Rabbi Nachman, who is this? He said, this is Moshe Rabbeinu. Unbelievable. Unbelievable. They tell this story over in Breslov to show you that Moshe Rabbeinu, in a sense, gave his haskama to Reb Noson's writings in Likutey Halakhot. Okay? And on one hand, it makes sense. You can't have a lot of good in the world without a smack. It can't be that good comes to the world and there's no equal negative opposition. Because there's a rule, there's the theory of relativity in Judaism. For every positive force, there has to be an equivalent negative force. So when a big dosage of Kedusha comes to the world, there has to be a smack. There has to be a difficulty. It can't be, it's so easy. It's like, it's so good to come to, because then there's no reward. There's no value to your coming to the good. You didn't work for it. You didn't toil for it. Lefum, sa'ara, agra, according to the tsar, the difficulty, the challenge. That's how the person comes to the reward. So it makes sense that good things are dressed in a lot of concealment, a lot of darkness, a lot of schmutz. And the only way to get to it is you have to face this opposition and you have to work to overcome it. It's not easy. Many people, they can't handle it. But someone who's looking for the truth will push everything aside and go forward. So we just, in this period, we have a beautiful haskama from Moshe Rabbeinu on Reb Noson's writings. Reb Noson said about his writings, he said that the world say about the writings of the Shla Kadosh. There's this holy book called the Shla, or the Shnei Luchot HaBrit, Rabbi Shayahu Halevi Horvitz. And he said about his book, my book is the antechamber to Gan Eden. My book, the Shla Kadosh, it's really an amazing book, the Shla. It's an amazing, amazing book. He's buried in Tveria, by the way, not far from the Rambam. So the Shla said about his book, it's so amazing. It's praising the work because it's really an amazing book. He said, this book is the antechamber to Gan Eden. And Reb Noson says, my Likutey Halakhot is the Gan Eden itself. It's the Gan Eden itself. He wrote a lot. It's 8 volumes. It's over 3,500 double column pages. It's a giant set, Likutey Halakhot. And in 40 years, Reb Noson wrote it. And this is while doing 500 other things. This is while Reb Noson was raising a family, encouraging the Breslov Chassidim, raising money to build the Klois in Uman, writing letters always to people. You felt Reb Noson did so much, you felt that he was only doing this because he was so involved in it, in talking to people. So you thought maybe he's all his whole time spending talking to people. No, he spent a lot, but not only that, he was also writing letters. So you think, look how many people received letters from him. He must be only writing letters all day. No, he also did other things. He also had time to write chidushim. He said about himself, about his Likutey Halakhot Reb Noson, that he wrote a lot, and he needed to write quickly, because he was always worried that the opposition would try to confiscate his works, as was to happen. We're missing we have 8 volumes of Likutey Halakhot. We're missing an entire section in Hoda'ah. It's called Volume 20, Krach Kaf. No one knows today where it is. It was confiscated by the police in the city of Breslov in that period of 1835 to 1838. Till today, nobody knows where it is. The Misnagdim, they with bribe money, they pushed the police to come to invade his house, to close off the printing press that he built in his house to print the books, to seal it off, and to confiscate all of his writings. Many were returned, but many were not, including a whole section in Hoda'ah of Noson's writings. So it would have been more than 8 volumes. It would have been maybe 8, 9 volumes. And that was a section where Reb Noson was really writing about the concept of the tzaddik, which is something very delicate that people are scared to go into. And dafka, that section was confiscated and taken away. Okay? So Reb Noson was very eager to write quickly. So he said, Reb Noson, that it's known that the Shach is the Siftei Kohen, Rabbi Shabtai Kohen. He's a major commentator on the Shulchan Aruch, on sections, I think, Hoda'ah and Choshen Mishpat. And the Shach is very long, and he also passed away young. He passed away in his 40s. And people were amazed, how did he write so much and he lived so short? So they say, or it was the tradition passed on, that the Shach knew a holy name, and he would say the holy name, and his pen, his finger, his hand, would write as fast as he was thinking. Because normally you write slower than you think. You can't write the same speed as you're thinking, unless you're a slow thinker. But those fast thinkers, they're writing, and because the writing is slower, so it takes them more time to write as they're thinking. The Shach, he was able, with this holy name, to write at the speed of his thoughts. Amazing. So Rav Noson said about himself, I can write that fast without using the holy name. That's why I was able to write so much. And also, Rav Noson, because he was so quick in writing, so when the editors came to try to print a book from his writings, it was hard to read the letters because they were so intertwined, because he was so fast in writing. It was back then dipping in the inkwell and then writing with the pen, and then dipping in the ink every time. So the letters would get merged one into another a little bit, okay? But in the end, they were able to figure out what he was writing, because the ones who published the book was Rav Noson's main disciple, Rav Nachman of Tulchin. He was the main editor to prepare it for the publishers, the printing press. So Rav Noson finally in 1843, 1844, printed the first volume in his lifetime of his Likutey Halakhot. The remaining volumes were only printed after his passing. So he spent the major part of the year 1843, 1844 to raise money to collect funds to pay the debts that he owed money for the printing of the Likutey Halakhot. Now, it wasn't printed in the Ukraine, it was printed in nearby Moldova, because the Ukraine being part of the Russian Empire and under the influence of very bad, evil, secular Jews, they put a ban on printing any Hasidic teachings, specifically from Chabad and Breslov, in Russia, with the excuse that it brings people to depression. Crazy. That was their excuse. So they banned printing Hasidic teachings. Crazy. Chabad and Breslov. So Rav Noson had no other choice but to hide it very secretly in writing letters. He would never mention printing the books. He would always mention our merchandise. And in this case, he had to send his disciple, Rav Nachman Tulchiner, to Yassi in Moldova to print the Likutey Halakhot. So he'd call him Rav Nachman the merchant, Rav Nachman the merchant, and the merchant, in order that it should not be revealed to the authorities that they're printing books illegally. Because even to bring them into Russia would be forbidden. Not just to print them in Russia, but to bring in these illegal books, okay? So in these letters, we're going to see Rav Noson is really speaking in a very hidden term. All the people who are receiving the letters understand what we're talking about. What's the merchandise? Are you selling stockings? What are you selling? He doesn't mention. We know it's talking about the books. So Rav Noson printed the book, the first volume, and you can imagine he was ecstatic. It was one of the happiest years of his life, to finally see a book that's going to explain the depth behind Rabbi Nachman's teachings. Volume 1. It's after almost 40 years of work. Crazy. Unbelievable. So he was very happy this year. It was at the same time that he was writing this discourse on giving thanks, as the timing was amazing. You see, Rav Noson was anyways learning the Shulchan Aruch, and anyways he got to the laws of giving thanks, and Hashem made it that in his life he had a lot of happy occasion to write about. Like the timing was just so divine providence, you can't overlook it. It was so clear. So Rav Noson had printed the Likutey Halakhot Volume 1, and he's writing the discourse on giving thanks, and you see Rav Noson's heart opening up all the way in this beautiful discourse, going into all the deeper meaning behind the Korban Todah, the Thanksgiving offering in the time of the Beit HaMikdash, and today it's the Birkat HaGomel, and the power of how giving thanks to Hashem is a key for everything in life, of taking on a positive attitude as the key for everything. And Rav Noson really goes into it. Plus, Rav Noson had his son married. His youngest son, Nachman, one of his youngest sons, Nachman, finally married. He's over 60. Rav Noson remarried. His first wife passed away. With his second wife, he had 2 children, 2 sons, Yosef Yonah and Nachman. So Nachman got married that year, so Rav Noson was very happy. He's getting his youngest child getting married. That's on the positive side. But on the painful side, there was a lot of difficulty in Rav Noson's life personally and by the Breslov movement. That winter, when Rav Noson wrote this discourse, he started in Parshat Lech Lecha, which is Cheshvan, right? The beginning of the winter. And he went into, Kislev, Tevet, Shvat, and then into the beginning until Adar, the beginning of Adar. So the Ukrainian winter was very bad that year, and the Breslov Klois in Uman caved in. There were storm winds, strong storm winds, and the Breslov Hasidim weren't rich people. Rav Noson worked years to raise money to build this building, and it was made of wood. Okay, it wasn't made of like solid brick. Wood. A storm wind came and just destroyed the roof. It collapsed. And in the roof, there was a special room for Rabbi Nachman's disciple, Reb Naftali. Reb Naftali lived, I guess, with his wife in the roof of the Breslov Shul in Uman, and he was badly injured. He was almost killed with the accident, you can imagine. And it was so bad that they said, Reb Naftali can't live here anymore. He has no choice but now to decide to move finally to Eretz Yisrael. And he was thinking to move to Eretz Yisrael. He never moved in the end though, but you have no place there. And for Reb Noson, it was such a painful, in the middle of the winter when a building breaks, in the Ukrainian winter, how are you going to fix it? You can't fix it now. You fix buildings in good weather, in the summer, in the spring. In the freezing cold, who's going to fix a building? So they had to work on figure out a temporary cover-up, which would be freezing cold until Pesach time, until it's spring time, whatever comes, springtime. So it was really hard. Yet Reb Noson didn't take it as a blow. He took it as something positive. He said, even when the enemies destroyed the Beit HaMikdash, the first Beit HaMikdash, and the second one by the Romans, the first one's by the Babylonians, and the second one by the Romans, they only destroyed the top part of the Beit HaMikdash. The foundations are still there. And can be rebuilt upon. We know the foundations are there because we have the Kotel HaMaravi, which is connected to the bottom foundation of the Beit HaMikdash. So Reb Noson incorporated this idea in the lesson. And he said, as much as the enemies try to destroy any house of Kedusha that we try to build in our life, they can only destroy the roof. They can't totally destroy it. The temple was never totally destroyed. Goodness, Kedusha, can never be totally destroyed. There's always a foundation. And he says this applies even to a Jew. The Yetzer Hara can fry a person, can burn out a person, can make a person miserable, can make it go off. But the foundations of a Jew can never be destroyed by the Yetzer Hara. As much as Yetzer Hara tries to destroy, kill a Jew, to make him so against the Torah, against Hashem, but the foundations are there. That's what exactly the situation of the Jews today. The majority of Jews in the world are secular. They have no connection to Judaism. They don't observe, but they have Jewish foundations. They have Jewish identity. Many of them do the Brit Milah still, even though many keep Pesach, many give charity to Jewish organizations. They like Jewish. October 7th especially brought out Jewish identity. Instead of Jews chickening out, they said, "No, I'm not religious, but I'm proud to be a Jew." Okay, that's the idea that the foundation is still there. Okay, that the Yetzer Hara can do everything to destroy the top. I have a joke on that. That many Jews they fall off, they take off the kippah, they cut off the beard and the payas. So the top is taken off, but the foundation, which is in the bottom, which is where the Brit Milah is, the circumcision, the foundation is still there. As far as Jews are secular, they still, majority of them, 98% of the Jews in the world, of the secular Jews, they will still do circumcision, they will still do Brit Milah, they will still keep some foundations. You have a minute few that will not, but the majority who have Jewish identity will keep the foundation. So Reb Noson was able to take what happened and bring out the practical dimension. In the end, Hashem helped him to raise the funds and everything. Then Reb Noson had something very terrible happen to him in his life. His daughter-in-law, which was his stepdaughter. Reb Noson's second wife, Dishele, she had children from her previous marriage, and one of them was a daughter who married Reb Noson's son from his first marriage. Reb Noson had a son, David Tzvi, who was deformed. He was a hunchback. So already he was a hunchback. Who's going to marry him? But he was a Talmid Chacham. He was a good person. He had a temper because he was in a lot of pain. He was always in physical pain because of being bent over. But he was a Talmid Chacham. And it seems his stepsister, in other words, it's not his sister because of marriage, but not his actual sister. According to Halakhot, he's allowed to marry her. She obviously saw the greatness of David Tzvi being in the same house. So they made a shidduch, they married. So the Reb Noson was the father-in-law and the father. He was the father of David Tzvi and the father-in-law. So she accepted to marry someone who was a hunchback because she saw that he was a beautiful person. Reb Noson said that David Tzvi was the only son, the only son who most came close to Reb Noson's analytical power in learning Torah. Of all his sons, Rav David Tzvi was the most, and anyways, he was deformed, so he was learning Torah all day anyways, so he was able to learn a lot. But he was the most close to Rav Noson's way of learning, but he was deformed, and he suffered a lot. She obviously saw his greatness, she agreed to marry him. So she They had a baby boy, they had a son, had a cute little boy, and that little boy was perfectly healthy and everything, brought a lot of simcha to David Tzvi. And then she became pregnant with another child. While she became pregnant with the other child, towards Pesach, before Pesach, between Purim and Pesach, she developed a major mouth infection, and she refused to eat anything. And she was already like in her 7th month or 8th month in pregnancy. I'm sorry to say this, I know it hurts, but just to look at what Reb Noson went through. She had a major mouth infection, and she passed away from it, and the baby also died. They couldn't save the baby. So Rav David Tzvi was hit like crazy. It hurt him terrible to lose his wife, and plus a second child on the way. But that wasn't enough. About a few weeks later, sorry, I made a mistake. It's reversed. Rav David Tzvi first lost his son. The boy passed away. And then 3 weeks later, she developed this mouth infection and died, leaving David Tzvi with nobody. He lost his wife, his son, and his expected second child. Okay? When I read this myself, I started to cry. I was crying because, you have nothing. You have nothing in life. And then after having nothing, they take away even more. This is what's left. And I said, Rav Noson, what in the world? Why you of all people have to suffer being a grandfather to such a miserable case, such a painful situation? He's a hunchback. He has no life already. And then his son is taken away. The simcha of his life is the child taken away. And then his wife, expecting a second child, was also taken away. So he's left with nothing again. And he never remarried in the end, Reb David Tzvi. He passed away young also, they say. He passed away like in his 40s because of his pain and deformality. So Reb Noson shows that even in the most painful situations, the only way to deal with them is you have to disappear into the world of emunah and simcha. Even in the most painful things, because again, you are seeing things as painful and suffering from this perspective of your physical existence in this world. Do you know the whole picture? No. You admit you don't know the picture. You admit that only with emunah can I bypass. But on the other hand, it hurts. I'm even being Hashem. What do you want from me? I'm not an angel. I'm not like an outstanding tzaddik that I can now see everything like Rabbi Akiva. I'm not holding on Rabbi Akiva's level. I'm not at that level. So if that's the case, why send us tests that we hear about them or we see them chas v'shalom and they're unbearable? So here, that's the exact same discourse that Reb Noson wrote while he had such amazing simcha in his life personally with the Likutey Halakhot, and then marrying off his son, the youngest son, Nachman. The same joy that was able to activate, to probe into the depth and the power of simcha when things are amazing, was able to use it to show that even when facing chas v'shalom adversity in life, you need the same utensils, you need the same vessels. It makes sense. Reb Noson wrote such a powerful discourse. Again, there has to be a smack. For Reb Noson personally, he wrote one of his most amazing discourses on simcha, which is this discourse, Birkat Hoda'ah Vav, and yet he faced a personal tragedy. Okay, he lost a daughter-in-law and a daughter, a son, a grandson, and another baby on the way, and he had to console his wife. She was mourning for her daughter, and he has to console his son, David Tzvi, who lost his wife and his child. So Reb Noson, at the same time, is writing this discourse, and he continues writing to show you, don't get weighed down by anything that hits you. We have to know also another point. These tzaddikim, we see our personal lives, we see what we're going through. The more you live life, the more you see how far you are from these tzaddikim. Even from Reb Noson, when you see Reb Noson's life, you begin to see where I'm holding and where he is, it's like worlds apart. And yet, the only person who can relate to me more than anybody else is this Reb Noson. If it's in his prayers, in his letters, in his discourse in Likutey Halakhot, he understands me better than anybody else. I have a friend here, a Sephardi guy, a Sephardi Israeli guy, and he's crazy about Reb Noson. He says, I can't get it how some Jew living in eastern Ukraine in 1800s can write such books that explain exactly what I'm going through today. It's not normal. It doesn't make sense that someone wrote a book 1840 in a little shtetl village detached from the world. Who in the world even knew Breslov on the map? It's a little village in eastern Ukraine, okay? And he was able to write such teachings that are so far-reaching, so penetrating, so relating to everybody in the world. How could it be? So it makes sense, unfortunately, someone of his caliber, Reb Noson, that he went through tragedies. But it doesn't mean that we have to go through these things also, chas v'shalom. When you read these things, oh no, this is what I have to go through in order to be a Breslover, chas v'shalom. Is this what, in order to come closer to Hashem, I'm going to have to pay the price? The answer is you're going to have to pay something, but you don't have to feel, oh my God, I'm going to be hit like him. These tzaddikim, because they paved the way for us. So there's this concept, it's a Jewish concept, that tzaddikim, they're in a sense an atonement, a kapara for us. What they went through, they're going to use that for Mr. J. They say that he was a atonement for what we're doing. So it's a Jewish idea. It is a Jewish idea. It's a Torah idea that tzaddikim are a kapara from Israel. That what they go through is to make it easier for us. They went through difficult things because number one, they can handle it. They were holding at that level. Okay, they can go through that. But more than that, it's easier for me now. And they did the job, so I don't have to go crazy. Oh no, look what you have to go through to be a tzaddik. You have to go through this. You have to go cut off fingers. I'm just saying them. It's crazy things, but we don't have to go that far. People suffer, people go through difficulty, but remember, people go through difficulties is because they can handle it. They're super strong. Kfum gamla shechma. It's a Gemara. According to the camel, that's how you put the load on the camel. If it's a big, strong camel, you put on a lot of loads. If it's like a weak camel, you don't give him that much. So too, if there's a Jew who's super strong, so Hashem tests him at his level. What can you do? I can't handle these tests. I'm a what's it called? An onlooker. I'm standing on the side and I see what they're going through, and I say I can never go through this. I can never go through this. And the answer is yes. You're not expected to go through this because you're not holding at their level. Okay? There was a Breslover. He passed away, an American Breslover, Rav Shlomo Aaron Gottlieb. And he went to spend Rosh Hashanah in Meron in the 1960s. In the 1960s, it was impossible for Jews from anywhere else in the world to come to Uman for Rosh Hashanah. So because of that, the Breslover Hasidim initiated a few big gatherings for the Breslovers in the diaspora. During World War II, the big one was in Lublin in Poland, until Nazi Germany destroyed everything. And at the same time, they developed two main gatherings of Breslovers in Israel, one in Meron by Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, one in Yerushalayim, and one eventually in New York also. Those are the three kibbutzim. So this Shlomo Aaron Gottlieb wanted very much to be part of the kibbutz, the gathering for Rosh Hashanah in Meron. So he gets to Meron, and the first person he sees is this dynamic Breslover Chassid. His name was Rav Shmuel Horvitz. Rav Shmuel Horvitz, he was watching him during the davening of the night of Rosh Hashanah. Whenever the Chazan said the name of Hashem, he started to shake and his face turned red. Okay? When the Chazan would say, Baruch Atah Hashem, Rav Shmuel Horvitz's face would like turn red and he began to tremble. So he was going out of his mind, Shlomo Aaron Gottlieb, what people reached, what level of devotion they were able to reach. So that night he was going nuts. Because he's an American boy. He's a American Hasidic boy. I'm not used to seeing such things. He went to the forest and said, Hashem, I'm not ready for what you want to make out of me. If this is my goal to become a tzaddik like that, I'm not ready for this. I'm not holding at that level. And the point is pretty clear, is that it's true. You're not expected to do what you read about other tzaddikim, what they did. If they, in the freezing winter, they would crack the ice and go to the mikveh, the freezing under the ice, they would go in the river. You know, we go nuts when you see that. But these people that are holding at that level, that was a level of emunah and yira and avodah. So matching that level, they had suffering that matched that. When I was a teenager in Breslov, I'm talking about the 1990s. So I made it to Uman Rosh Hashanah the first year, 1992. And there was a Breslover, an elder alive at the time. His name was Rav Shmuel Chechik. This Rav Shmuel Chechik had a high case of diabetes, and it affected his fingers and his toes. His fingers became all blown up, all bloated, deformed fingers, and his feet also. And he didn't care about anything. He was just davening and learning, and he could hardly hold the pages. And I was saying to myself as a teenager, what? That's what it means to become a Breslover? I'm going to have to suffer like this with bloated fingers, deformed, just davening and learning. I do want davening and learning, but these are the conditions I'm going to have to go through. And it was like like a fear. It was like a pushback. Like I can't go forward because now look, I'm going to pay the price. And as time went on, you see the answer. The answer is you're not them. Rav Noson, I took years till I finally saw Rav Noson talks about this. He says, don't compare yourself to another person. There's a halacha, look, as an example how Rav Noson is amazing. He takes something from the section of Choshen Mishpat, which are laws and monetary laws. And he talks about the laws of when Jews build a home, you're not allowed to build two Jewish homes where the doors face each other. You can't have it that the door is here and door here, or window here or window here. Why? Because of Ain Hara. Because also Marit Ain. Because you can, what is he doing today? And what time does he leave his house? It's forbidden to build Jewish homes where the doors and the windows are facing. The Jews in the desert were praised by Bilam. Right? Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov. How good are your tents, Yaakov? So Rashi says on the spot, what does it mean, how good are your tents, Yaakov? That the tents of the Jews in the desert were not facing each other. So that he opens, good morning, and he peeks in. You don't have Shalom Bayit today. I can say your wife is dressed and you're walking around with your underwear. What is this? That happens when the openings are facing each other, right? So the Jews were praised that no, the openings were facing. Is everything okay?
You're bringing up stuff.
I'm sorry. Okay? All right? This is why. So Reb Noson takes this idea and he said also it applies to your personal avodat Hashem. Don't start looking at the other person. Don't use your window. Look how he is. I want to be like that. I'm jealous. Look at him. He's able to get up on time and he's such a tzaddik and he's like this. And how come not me? You're not allowed to look at anybody in avodat Hashem. You're you and he's he. It's forbidden. You're not allowed to look at his home. His home meaning his avodat Hashem, how he davens, how he learns. You're not allowed to look at the other guy. Okay, you're not allowed to look at the other guy. Why? Because you're you and he's him. So stop looking at him. If now you hear the stories to give you inspiration to become who you are. But now to become jealous and broken. Look, he did that. The Chafetz Chaim did this and I can't do this, so I'm a nobody. The Chazon Ish did like this. I'm reading these stories and look at me. I'm a nobody. I see the stiper like this and then also Rabbi Nachman, Reb Noson. I should be holding at this level. Baal Tshuvas have that a lot, by the way. Baal Tshuvas, they're on such fire. Everything they read about, I have to do. That's it. I have to be like this. I have to be like that. But they're running on fire that's not their level. Rav Shmuel Shapira, he took upon himself a high level of devotion. And a new recent Baal Tshuva came close to him. He decided to do the same thing. Rav Shmuel Shapira said, my dear friend, I'm doing this after I finished learning all the sections of Taharot and the Mishnayot off by heart, with all the commentaries, plus all my background information. And you're just jumping in to do these things? No. Don't start copying me and doing what I'm doing because I'm doing it. I'm coming after a lot of preparation, a lot of hard work to get to where I'm holding in life, okay? So it is a big thing. So going back to Rav Noson, he suffered terribly this year. A year before he passed away. David Tzvi, crippled, left with nothing. And yet Rav Noson was able, because he was such a soldier, he was such a follower of Rabbi Nachman, he was so nullified in the beauty of the message of hope that Rabbi Nachman emphasized more than anybody else in history. So with that, he was able to bypass these tests and use them to build a person. How could you build a person like this? With his son, there's only so much he can do because he's him. But Rav Noson, how he suffered from it, he was able to take it and push him to the highest levels of simcha and emunah, because that's all you can do. And if you do the right thing when being tested like crazy, you come to such a jackpot in life that you tell everybody it was worth it. I don't want to do it again, but it was worth it. There was one Breslover Chassid, Rabbi Yisrael Dov Odesser. He's the one who started Nanach. Okay, he had many good qualities. Okay, so he said about himself, I'm willing to go through again all the suffering I went through, because I seeing what I came to in my life, where it brought me. This man, he suffered tremendously. I can't go. That's another hour to go over what he went through. That's not even enough. So he said that I'm willing to suffer again everything I went through because of what I gained from the challenges. So this is something important. Rabbi Nachman said clearly, Lo leit pached klal. You're walking on a narrow bridge, a tightrope. Don't make yourself afraid. Don't be afraid. Don't make yourself afraid. Hold on. The majority of people don't hold on. The majority of people they crack when they're faced with traumatic challenges in life because they don't know what to do. But if a person, Baruch Hashem, has the merit of coming close to Rabbi Nachman and his teachings and begins to apply them in his life, he knows what to do. It becomes instinct to know what to do. When he's squeezed, he knows that the first thing is to turn to Hashem, to go to graves with tzaddikim, to start going massive hitbodedut. There's nowhere else to turn to. There's nowhere to run. There's no rabbi and mekubal and kabbalist who will get me. That's all just trying to look for a quick relief. I need a major salvation, and I know that no one in this world can help me anymore. It's so painful and so deep and so difficult that I have to go to the highest possible source, and that's Hashem directly, and I have to utilize the merit and the koch of the tzaddikim who have unlimited power to help us. So when a person does that, he comes to the biggest gifts of life. All right, this was a good introduction for the next class. Okay, there won't be a class next week because I will be by Reb Noson's grave. B'ezrat Hashem. We will continue with the letter 440. That's the letter that we will be starting with B'ezrat Hashem, and it'll be a totally new dimension of Noson. And the focus is on the simcha, the power of simcha, and not to be weighed down by the painful situations. B'ezrat Hashem. You want to say something? Okay, we'll stop the class. Okay, thank you everybody for joining. It was a blast.